right, welcome. Okay, I'm so excited. We are here with GennaRose Nethercott, and I don't know if you guys remember her, but she came to the Six Bridges Book Festival for Cows back in 2022. So it wasn't last year.
I was there last year and the year before. So I did the digital one 2 years ago.
Okay,
And then I was there in person this past one.
this past one. Okay, right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so it was with Thistlefoot, which I have checked out from our library, which is exciting. But in addition to that, which we do have the video of last year's, where you did like a really cool puppet show kind of situation with the house. And that was so cute. But also, what we're talking about now is you have a new book that is coming out. When is it? February 9th? Or is
February
it
6th. It's even
February
sooner.
6th?
It's just a few weeks away from the moment we are recording this. So yeah, I have a new book coming out. It's a collection of short stories, which honestly, like, this is my secret. That's not so secret, but like short stories are my real love. So I'm really excited to kind of throw my hat into the ring with all my favorite short story writers. It's gonna be
This
cool. And actually, one of your local fellas has blurbed it. Kevin Brockmeyer
Kevin,
blurbed the book, so that
oh,
was a real honor. He's a legend. So
that's exciting. Kevin actually he has done the festival every single year. So
what a
he
champ.
yes, yes. So that is exciting. So I dug around online and I did find where I was able to read a little bit of your book. So I started reading the one about the stairwell,
Oh yes, Sundown at the Eternal Staircase.
the eternal staircase. Yes. That one was cool. I was definitely intrigued. The characters, just the premise of it completely. Basically, there's just a giant stairwell that goes down and nobody knows exactly how far, and it kind of recounts the people who live in the town and what it's like to have this oddity, which I think a lot of people in Arkansas can kind of relate to. We have a lot of weird things. I mean, probably not as weird as a staircase that goes down to nowhere. But it was definitely an interesting story. Do you want to share maybe a little bit
Yeah,
about that?
so I mean, the story itself features, as you said, this eternal staircase that goes infinitely downward. And is sort of this strange tourist trap roadside attraction that these two teenage girls are working a summer job at. And one of the girls becomes more and more enticed with descending deeper and deeper into the staircase. And I live in a rural area. I grew up in a rural area. I'm a rural artist, and I'm from southern Vermont, which is where I'm phoning into today from. And here in Vermont, we have this real kind of push-pull dichotomy, which I imagine in Arkansas you experience a lot of the same thing between the very real needs of the citizens and the sort of attempt to draw some kind of tourist economy in and therefore like cover up the needs of the citizens. We here in Vermont, especially in my region of Vermont, have one of the highest opiate overdose rates in the country. And so there's a real like addiction problem here, and yet the town tries to cover it up in order to maintain this postcard perfect facade. So I wanted to explore that. I wanted to write about that. And so this staircase is kind of, this fantastical, allegorical version of that struggle here, as well as just being like a fun, spooky time. This is my whole thing. This is my shtick, is I'm like, here's a dark truth about life and loss and addiction and grief. And also, isn't it fun? So that's how I get you. Look
No,
out.
I really enjoyed it. Like you said, there's definitely some layers in these stories that were kind of fun to peel back. Although I didn't get to read the ending, so I don't know quite yet what happens. So I am
No
already on the hold
spoilers.
list. No spoilers, because I don't have them, but I am on the hold list so that I can read it very soon. So you're kind of talking about the style. If people aren't familiar with your style of book, it kind of feels like these are like fairy tales for adults, right? To
In
an
a
extent.
way, yeah. I think of myself as a magical realist or like a weird fiction writer primarily. So I guess the simplest way to sum up the way that logic and magic works in my book is, in all my books really, is that it's just the reality we live in with the volume knob turned up, is kind of how I like to say it. So you know, in in real life, you may be in a relationship where you find yourself starting to like hollow out parts of yourself to be more accommodating for a partner. In my book, Homebody, or my story, Homebody, a woman genuinely begins turning into a house, right? So you have these things that seem on the surface to be very fantastical, very strange or surreal, but at least to me, they actually feel more accurate to the human experience than writing realism would. It's just taking the way it feels to be a human and cranking up that volume knob. And I think that often in our day-to-day life, we do experience this dissonance where the way it feels and the internal landscape of being a person is this hyperbolic, strange, surreal space that is not reflected in our physical world. So I guess I sort of see the genre I work in, this magical realist genre, as mending that rend, that dissonance, so that the way it feels is also the way the logic of the world functions. So yeah, if you're looking for like a high fantasy magic system, don't read my shit. You won't like it. But if you are interested in sort of the metaphorical landscape of the soul mixed in with some like spooky ghosts and like teenage girls making out, then I have you so covered. You have no idea.
Okay. So
You
we're
sound so skeptical.
oh, sorry. No, I'm like it's very deep, but in a really cool way. I'm excited for this. So where do you come up with these ideas? I know in your in Thistlefoot, we've kind of pulled for, you talk about the Baba Yaga. I'm suddenly
Baba
feeling like
Yaga.
Yaga. I was like, I'm not saying this right.
Sorry. To be fair, I think it's technically most usually Baba Yaga, but I don't say that because I always maintain saying Baba Yaga sounds a little too much like pronouncing croissant, and I just won't
I
do it on
I
principle
no, I
because
get
I'm
it.
an
I get it.
American.
I'm a baker, hence cake. And yeah, my husband gets onto me because I say French macaron, and he's like, everybody calls it a macaroon, and I'm like, yeah, but there's
Oh, but a
another.
macaroon's a different food.
It is. It's a different one, and so
Hmm.
I say macaron so people understand, but I don't go macaron because I mean that's just absurd.
Absurd. How dare the French?
But it's absurd coming out of this mouth. Okay,
No, I'm
that's.
I'm with you.
Sorry, I got just
Books.
whoop,
I wrote
books.
them.
So these ideas, where do you pull from? Where is
Um,
this well?
This well, yeah, so sort of this eternal staircase, if you will. Um, I mean, kind of like I've said, it's this volume knob turn up on reality, but specifically the stories in this collection are largely autobiographical in weird ways, or at least they're emotionally autobiographical. They're not literally physically autobiographical, but every story in the collection explores themes of yearning and longing in some way from some different angle. So sometimes that's romantic yearning, sometimes it's like sort of existential yearning or geographical yearning, what have you. But it's kind of about that push and pull in our own like constant desires that sort of are never met and never fully fed. So that's really the well from which every story in the collection is drawn. And one of the interesting things about this book is I actually wrote most of the stories in the collection before I wrote Thistlefoot. The oldest of the stories in the collection is more than 10 years old. The newest of the stories I wrote a couple months ago. And so it's this really interesting kind of map in a way of the different yearnings that I was grappling with at different points throughout my 20s and into my 30s. So, for me personally, it's kind of neat to look back over them and see what I was trying to parse out at each given moment or what I was like pulling toward uh and how that shifts. There You're not supposed to read your Goodreads reviews. I always read my Goodreads reviews because I have a skin of steel. And also because I like to see how people are engaging with my work. I think it's neat. And I come from poetry, so I'm used to people saying all sorts of horrific things about me, so I'm fine with it. And there was an interesting comment on someone's review where they were saying like some of the stories they felt like really connected with who they are now, and then some of the stories they felt like they a past version of themselves would have connected with really deeply. And I think one could read that as a critique, but to me, I really loved that because I was like, that's so accurate in terms of the way the book was written. Like for me, my relationship with this book is that parts of it are much more relevant to the yearnings that I was grappling with at 22. And then other parts are these yearnings I was grappling with at 32. And to kind of have that mapped out it's just neat.
I can totally see that. So the other story that I was able to read a little bit of, I can't remember the title now, I'm sorry, was about drowning.
Mm. Yeah, drowning
It's
lessons.
drowning lessons. Okay. So that one was very interesting. It really does, it talks about the yearning because we've got the two main characters here, the brother and sister. And where does that fit in? Where does that story fit in on your timeline?
I wrote Drowning Lessons in 2018 when I was on tour with my first book, The Lumberjack's Dove, which is a book-length poem. And the way that I toured that book, I can never tour in a normal way. I don't know. I come from the theater. I was raised as a child clown, and that's a true story. Yeah, my dad's a clown and my mom's a therapist. And here I am today. And so, yeah, so I've always grown up on the road. I've always been on tour, and I was on tour with my first book, which to me, rationally, the thing to do to tour a poetry book was to convert the trunk of my Honda Fit into a mobile theater, drive for 8 months across America in what I call the big loop, where I did a loop around the entire continental US border, doing over 100 readings with a puppet show animating the book. So that was the first cranky puppet show that I toured with. I know you're familiar with the Thistlefoot one, but this was the OG Lumberjack Shadow Cranky. And anyway, as I was on this tour, I was working on this book of short stories. And so I would drive all day. I would then park, I would then go do a gig, schmooze with some booksellers, drag these puppets out of the trunk, do this whole little song and dance number with no actual song and dance, but there were, again, puppets. Uh, get back in my car, find somewhere to pull over on the side of the road, lock up, crawl into the trunk, write a story, and then fall asleep in the trunk of my car at like 2 a.m. and then do it again the next day. So that is the environment in which, honestly, a large chunk of the stories in the collection were written. What state was I in when I wrote Drowning Lessons? Geographically speaking, could not tell you. I was somewhere in the amorphous American expanse. But yeah, it's a story about a teenage girl who has drowned 37 times, and anywhere she meets liquid, she somehow and it's not deliberate, it's not intentional. It just sort of these drownings find her. And the story is narrated by her brother, who is kind of watching and experiencing this phenomenon. And most of the story takes place at a house party, which I love writing party scenes. I think they're so fun. I got to invent a game in this story where I'm like, what kind of demented party games would a group of teenagers make up in a small town in the woods? And so I got to make up a game I called Arnold Arnold, which, okay, this is an aside here, but this actually blows my mind. So there's this demented party game the kids play in this story called Arnold Arnold that involves a series of progressively more kind of fucked up dares that they have to do. And I named the game Arnold Arnold. In the story, it says it was named after a kid in their school whose name was first name Arnold, last name Arnold. And that I got because when I was in college at the University of Edinburgh, I knew this like preppy Eton kid named Arnold Arnold. And it like always stuck with me. I was always like, that is an insane choice to name your kid Arnold Arnold. And I had this in my head for more than a decade, just like this kind of in the back of my head, a little obsession with this name Arnold Arnold. And I went back to Edinburgh this past summer for the first time in years. And I was hanging out with one of my old college friends, and somehow Arnold Arnold came up. And she was like, oh, I found out something crazy. And I was like, what? And she's like, that wasn't his real name. And I was like, I'm sorry, what do you mean? And she said, he had a normal name. He just made that up and told people his name was Arnold Arnold so he would sound more interesting. And now it is immortalized in my book. That book is being distributed all across America because this kid was like, you know what I think will make me far more interesting with these collegiate comrades of mine? If I have the first name Arnold and the last name Arnold. So yeah, that one's for you, Arnold Arnold, who was not.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Oh, that's
It's a lot to process, I understand.
yeah, no, sorry. I when I worked retail back in college, somebody gave me their credit card. It was a kid and his name was William O. William. And I said, "Do you hate your parents for naming you that?" And he said, "I love my name." So I don't know,
William
maybe
O.
it
William. That's kind of a
William O.
beautiful
William.
name, actually. Yeah.
You know,
It sounds like a lament.
it
Like
does.
William O. William. I'm gonna
And
name my kid William O. William. Just watch.
just do
William
it.
is actually my favorite name, so I like that's exactly the sort of thing I would do. But I guess I'd have to change my last name or have a co-parent with the last name William.
But yeah, there's some
It's a lot to
planning there.
consider.
I
Yeah.
know, I know.
Hmm.
Okay. So, talked about this. Any childhood, you
We've all
mentioned,
been there.
I mean, yes, yes, therapist and a clown. How much of that is finds its way into your writing?
Um, I would say the therapist clown part's very little, except for I do write a lot about the theater and I write a lot about like traveling theater. And like I said, I did grow up doing that, and I also did that through my teens and through my 20s and continue to this day. Um, but I honestly, my parents are amazing. I had a very like sweet, stable, loving home life. So there's not a lot to write from when you're like, I had a healthy childhood. But something that does very much make it into this particular collection is when I was in third grade, my family moved a town over, which it's only 10 minutes away from where I had started, but I had to switch schools. And so when you're in third grade, that is a huge change, an entirely new group of kids. And it just so happened that the group of girls at this new school I moved to were absolutely evil. Just like pure, undiluted, chaotic evil. It was that age where I have this theory about like girl brain development where they come to understand levels of like social order and like how to manipulate a social structure very quickly before boys do often, but they don't develop the conscience as to why they shouldn't until a little bit later. So you have this gap where there's like a very nuanced understanding of exactly how to like deteriorate someone's psychology and like nothing in your head telling you not to do it. So there's a story in the collection called A Diviner's Abecedarian, and it's in the form of like an ABCs of different kinds of divination, but it follows this pack of middle school girls as a new girl comes in, and they're kind of almost hazing ritual around this hated new girl. And it's a very surrealist story. They use a lot of occult techniques in this hazing, but so much of this story is autobiographical to my experience of moving to this new school. Like there's a scene in this story where the girls are uh out behind the dodgeball wall pressing on each other's hearts until they pass out, and then reviving and like asking what was seen, like did they have a vision when they were passed out. That was real. Like the girls in my school did that. Like
My
I
God.
remember like Brandy Gino coming to and then being like, what did you see, while she was like blacked out because they literally stopped her heart. Yeah, so there's some real, that's where a lot of the childhood trauma leaks in, is into yeah, if you had a rough middle school experience, you may find some of yourself in that story, and also I'm sorry.
My Okay, so of the 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart. So I'm assuming we've got 50 stories. Are there 50 different stories
No,
in the book?
so 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart is the titular story.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
there are 14 stories in the collection. 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart is about halfway through the collection. It's a bestiary of 50 invented mythical creatures. And it sort of is on the one hand, it's this encyclopedic bestiary. On the other hand, you're kind of following this thread throughout the story of these academics who are cataloging all of these beasts and their relationships, their kind of entangled relationships with each other. So that's where the 50 of them comes in, is there's 50 of these creatures. And what's really exciting to me about this story in the form it is in the book is that every single one of the beasts is illustrated. They are illustrated by my friend Bobby DeChani, who is an incredible artist. We've collaborated on a few other projects. Actually, the first book that I was at the festival with was Liana Fled the Cranberry Bog, which is a story in fold-up paper cootie catchers. Bobby DeChani illustrated that. So he's back and he has drawn these stunning, weird, creepy illustrations of every single beast in this 50 Beast compendium. So
Okay. Well, so I got a little notice. Our little meeting is pretty close to time up, and I don't want to keep us too long anyway. So I was going to ask you I'm going to throw out two questions. You can answer either one or both in our 9 remaining minutes. So do you have a favorite story from the book? And then also, what are you working on anything now? What's next?
yes. Favorite story kind of waffles around. I think my favorite might be Sundown at the Eternal Staircase, but I love a lot of them. I'm really excited about this book. I genuinely love this book. And I will say it's not a book that's for everyone. Like if you don't like weird fiction or you don't like sort of abstract metaphor or like exploring human emotion through metaphor, don't read it. You won't like it. But if you like weird, sort of experimental forms in which human feeling is amped up into the strange and the supernatural, I got you. And yeah, so I would say maybe it goes between Diviners and Sundown as my favorites, I think. But I kind of love them all. There's definitely one or two that I love less than the others. But one of the things that's been exciting in the book starting to go out in the world is every reader seems to have a different favorite, which is really heartening to me because it shows that like there's something in there for everyone, I guess, and that they have a balance to them, which is encouraging. As for what I'm working on now, funny you should ask. I have a new project that is officially in the works. It is what I call my hometown gothic project. It is a novel, and it is a novel based here in my hometown. It explores a number of the same themes as Sundown at the Eternal Staircase, but using sort of different, strange gothic magic weirdness. And there's some cursed perfume. There are some haunted carnivals. And one of the ththings I'm really excited about is you can see I'm in this little sound booth here, right? So I do a lot of podcast work. I work for the podcast Lore at Grim and Mild. I write and I research for the podcast Lore, and so I have to have this little sound booth for podcasty things. But this booth happens to be inside of a 1930s Art Deco movie theater and hotel called the Latches Theater. They gave me this little booth to work in, and they also gave me a little studio down in the movie theater. I also get free popcorn and soda forever. Now, the reason this is relevant to any of this is parts of this novel are set here in the Latches, and so they've actually dedicated this little nook for me to go write this novel. So over the next, year or so, I'm going to be a Phantom of the Opera-ing it down here in this movie theater, sneaking into movies, eating free popcorn, and creating this rural New England gothic of a novel.
So that is so exciting. You might be one of the most fascinating people I have had the opportunity to talk to. I love it.
Wow, thank you.
I mean, So I'm excited. I can't wait for your book. So February 6th, and it will be available through CALS. Also, you can go out and buy it, all the wonderful things.
And I will be doing a little tour for it that I'll be announcing soon. I won't be in Arkansas at least any time on this particular little leg of the tour. That doesn't mean that won't change, but yeah, what's the closest I'll be? I guess West Virginia, which isn't that close at all.
That's okay. That's all right.
But, you know, if you happen to be watching this and you don't live in Arkansas, I might be somewhere near you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us again. We love having you at the fest, and we're so excited for your new book.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I love the festival. It's like one of my favorites. So it's
Great.
an honor to chat.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.